Guys, we are live, episode 2, Unorthodox Perspectives, and yeah, we're a bit late, guys. With some tech issues on what I thought was what we thought was on Leroy's end ended up being my end, so I do apologize about that. Hopefully now you can hear us loud and clear. I will check on my phone in just a second, but the topic for today, guys, what Leroy and I will be discussing is life as a 20-something, and it's interesting. Like I put out a couple of posts this week about this specific topic. Go to my Instagram to check them out. But yeah, Leroy, how are you doing, man? How's your week been?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, my week has been busy, but I can't complain. How about yourself?
Yeah, busy week as well, but busy in like a good way. Like a good, productive, busy. A few changes happening and whatnot. So, and looking forward to what we're going to be talking about today, man. So yeah, where did you want to kick things off with this topic? I know we decided on it at the end of last week's show, and I'm really looking forward, like I say, to be talking about this. So yeah, man, well, where would you like to kick things off?
I think while I was thinking about it this whole week, I got to a point where I was thinking on the what the sort of mindset you are in when you are coming into the 20 something year old. Like it's like a bit of contradicting phase where you you're trying to live based on the principles and the upbringing you've had through when you were still a child, but at the same time now you're your own person as an adult, and you're trying now to make your own way, but there's quite a lot of influences from that background that you've grown up on. So I always, from my experience, let me say now, it's like I come from an African background, right? And there's quite a lot of cultural ways of going about things. There's quite a lot of it's just influence from the elders, right? And when you come to an age of your own independence, it's now sort of like you're starting as a child again. You're learning life again. Do you get me now?
Yeah? I do. Yeah, I do. And I've kind of seen this, like you say, about different cultures, so I've got quite a lot of, I think they're of like Asian kind of background and that, or their parents were, where it's also like this, where maybe people here in the UK, like myself and that, like don't necessarily have those experiences. But then I do think, like, even within society and kind of that type of thing, like you have this structure, don't you, of like school, college, like uni, graduate uni, and kind of like that pressure that I think like we all face. And then like you say, like I've from kind of being an outsider, I suppose, like looking into these other communities, like different cultures as well, that then I think obviously with your experience and with those in like the Asian background and that as well, like they also have these kinds of like ways as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So just so that we don't digress from the topic, that's the mentality I was thinking on, that we could talk on, like that you are coming from a lot of not your independent thinking. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because you're growing up based on what your parents are saying, based on what your culture is saying, based on, there's quite a lot of influences based on things that you don't have any control over. And when you come up to the 20-something year, like now, you are now very independent. You can take on a road whichever you want to take on, right? You don't have somebody coming down on your throat because you have chosen something. You know what I'm saying? And I think that opening of a whole new world can be overwhelming, I guess. As a 20.
Yeah. Sorry, man. And so, was it overwhelming for you?
It was. I'm not gonna lie, it was, because when I left the safety of my parents' home, I was going to university. And really, like, you're coming from 18 years of it's not your life, essentially. You don't have anything to say. And then all of a sudden, because I'm 18 and I've got my own place, I'm far away from home, your mind goes into overdrive because of freedom, right? And then I spend the next 2 years just trying everything and anything I can because I had that freedom now, right? But there comes a point now when you realize that you're not a child anymore. You actually have to take responsibility of your actions and things that you are about to do in your life, right? So
Mm.
I guess the mentality we have between that phase, that phasing from being a child into adulthood, it we rarely ever think about it. But it's only
Mm.
when you come to the 30s, like what we're saying, that sometimes people, when they get over 30 now, that's when they're like, I should have done something when I was 20 something. Do you
For
get me?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you, man. And like that's definitely the. I mean, I think there's so many ways that like we could take this topic in that.
Mm,
But like that's kind of like the mindset that I have is to use this age, right? To use like when we're 18 onwards, because now we do have that kind of freedom in its sense, in itself, to, like you've done, try a bunch of different things, like find what we're interested in, find what we're passionate about and find what we want to do. And I think what happens is people get into cycles, right? So they for whatever reason might start going clubbing and drinking, kind of all these different things, because it's part of like society, right? Like young people do that shit like probably more than somebody who's 50, it's just like in the like just what society does, but then what I've seen happen is, so they then live for the weekend, they get to Monday, they regret that shit, they
mm,
then complain they have no money, and then they feel real bad about their life and kind of all these different things. Maybe they hate their uni course. I think when we spoke on the Grow Together podcast, you kind of shared a bit of that, like you didn't like what you were doing on your course, and so they kind of have that. Maybe they only went to uni because their parents told them to, obviously, like we're saying here as well. And so, they complain and complain, like really hate their life. And so then they go back clubbing, kind of go back to do those things because they're like, through that, they're escaping their reality,
yeah.
and instead of accepting in a way, like, this is where I'm at, like what
Mm,
proactive things, what things can I do to change it? Like, for me, like that's all what clubbing, or that's all what like alcohol or drugs or kind of whatever it is. It's ways to escape your reality, right? Because you're hurting in some way, or because it's pain, or these types of things. So you use like these more short-term things that can give you pleasure, like in the moment, but you're never overcoming like the root cause of it, if that makes
yeah.
sense. And I think a lot of young people kind of get into these cycles of doing these types of things because they haven't worked out like what it is that they're passionate about, what it is that they love to do, because they are going to uni because their parents told them to, because they want to be a success, like, but we all, and so then it goes really deep into all these types of things, like with like redefining success and everything. So I don't know kind of your thoughts on that, but that's kind of like how I see it, very much going into what you were talking about just a minute ago. But I just think then it then comes back to like the habits and routines that we just get into. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I have like the other podcast, Redefine Your 20s, right? To bring on inspirational young people who have lived this period of time doing it differently to then build something. Because that's what I'm passionate about, right? That let's use this time. We are super young. Like we've now got the technology as well, right? To
Mm,
build something that then, like, for the rest of our lives, instead of the getting to 35, 40, but even older, like, it could be 50 or whatever it is, and then having all these bunch of regrets because we've done all this dumb shit in our 20s. And so, like, that's my thing, like redefine your 20s. But man, I'll hand it back over to you on kind of on that point.
no, definitely. Like, you touched on something there on like how we get on these habits to sort of like cope with the times we're in. We may find it difficult, we may find it like we're trying to escape that. And you think it's those things that we pick up when we are coming into our 20s that we find so hard to leave behind until we are around 30s. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Because now time is forcing us to do certain things. and it becomes a very reactive life. It becomes you're reacting to the times that you are living. You're not necessarily creating by the time that you are having. If that makes sense. I had a I had a talk once. I think I invited you to it in Gloucester, but it was on over the weekend, so you never really be available. But it was a different talk, but I wanted to just talk about this segment that I spoke on, which
Yeah,
was different aspects we all have as 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 the human species, basically, from the child to the infant, the infant to the toddler to the teenager to the 20 something year old, that's youth. And then you've got the elders that come after us, 30, 40, 50. Now, what I basically used a tree as an illustration, right? To illustrate that we are all one. We all work, as much as we are from different, we have different age groups. It When you look at it all, it's all interlinked, right? Now you look at a tree. If you go out walking anytime this weekend, just observe the tree. Don't label it. Don't do anything. Just learn from it.
Give,
No.
yeah, okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Give me a minute, man. Wait 1 second. I'm losing you. 1 second. I think it might be my internet. Give me a minute. I'm just going to change internets. I might disappear. I'm just going to change. 1 sec.
Mm-hmm. Wait, are we still recording? I think we are. Hey guys, Unorthodox Perspectives here. Oh, look, is out the show. Guess you've got me for 2 minutes.
There we go.
Oh,
sorry about that.
you.
My internet. Okay, awesome. Sorry, Leroy. Finish off where you were.
Yeah. So
The tree.
the tree, you're following. So when you look at a tree, right? Like I was saying, it's a perfect illustration of how we all are interlinked. We all need each other, no matter the type or no matter the age group you are in. Now, let's look at a tree. We've got the root, we've got the trunk, right? And then we've got the branches, and then we've got the leaves, right? Now, what I was trying to illustrate is that in order for a society, in order for a community, in order for unity and strength between people, even a family. Let's look at it in a family sense, right? You've got your babies, you've got the teenagers, you've got the youth, and then you've got your parents, and then you've got the great parents or great parents, grandparents, right? The infants are the roots. They are underneath. They are protected by the family. We don't know about who's in your. If you've got a toddler at home, it's very protected. They're very insulated, right? Everyone is giving everything they have in order to bring about the flourishing of this little seed in the family, right? And the stronger they grow, they start budding out of the ground, right? They start coming out into the world, right? They start interacting with things of the world, right? It may be nursery, it may be school, football, those little things, they are growing, right? I'm just trying to quickly paraphrase. Now, when you get to the teenage years, youth years, right? That's a time of that's our peak of strength in mentality, mentally, physically, any form, we come to our peak right at this period where we're talking about the 20 somethings. You know what I mean? Now, from then on, you've got your parents. That's the branches. These are the ones that hold the fruits. They hold the fruits that come out when we bloom, right? And then we've got the leaves. I looked at the leaves as our grandparents. Do you know what I mean? They're about to fall off. They're about to leave us behind, right? But one thing that happens is that you see there's a cycle there that happens, is that our grandparents always have almost they are closer to our toddlers than we are, if you realize. Our great grandparents, you're more fond of your grandparents as a child, right? Because they've got a soft spot for you, right? They will let you get away with a lot, right? They will waver on a lot of things that you may want to do, right? Now, this was what I meant. Now, I wanted to talk about the trunk part, which is the youth. As the youth, we are the ones that are able to hold up the branches, right? As well as what? Keep the roots and keep everything, grounded, right? Now, if you don't have a trunk, do you have a tree?
Good question. No.
No, right? Yeah, you don't have a tree, right? There is no tree. The trunk is the strength of the tree. When the wind blows, it's the trunk that holds us, together. When it's always the trunk that keeps us grounded where we are, right? Now, when we look at it now in society, what happens is that when we are kids, we grow, we get cultivated, right? And we grow into the trunk that we become, right? We become strong. We are so stubborn. A trunk is hard to move. You can't just move a trunk. We're so stubborn, but you can easily uproot a root. Yeah. Now, branches are the ones that connect us with our grandparents. These are our parents. Our parents are the ones that are trying to keep everything together. They're trying to keep everything together. And half the time, what we don't realize is that if we really look at that family tree, if you have a youth who's very involved in the family, it becomes much more easier for the other age groups to sort of like move about, right? If you have a stubborn teenager, I don't know how you were as a teenager, right? And you're stubborn, you're always constantly fighting your parents, you're giving them stress, you hardly help at home, you don't want anything to do with the house. The kids, the smaller ones, they look up to you because you are the closest to them, right? But if you are not doing anything as much to help your parents are having to sort of come down from that branch level all the way down to the roots, trying to cultivate the roots, which is supposed to be our part as the youth. Now, follow me now. I know I'm going like that, but this is the point I'm trying to make, is that when we are cultivated as kids and we grow up in however way, and we do not realize truly where we are in terms of, it's not necessarily always our fault, because you have to realize it's all about how you grow up, who's your parents, you know what I mean, the influences in your life,
environment,
right? Everything comes into play. But here I'm talking in general to say that as youth, we are the most powerful of all the age groups, because at this age, this is why you can go out and party every weekend, if not every night, and still wake up and get to work on a Monday, right? Because you have that energy physically. Mentally, you are questioning a lot, because you're thinking like the way things have been is there's so many things that come into your head now, because you're questioning a lot. That's your mental capability. Your mental capability is enabling you to further into new areas that may not have been reached by the previous generation, right? So if you now look at our different strengths, right? If we were to take ourselves and really take stock of our life, of our position in our society or in our family as youth, you realize that you are the ones that hold up the family based on the strength that you have. You can help your parents. If you work, you can help your parents pay bills, do certain things in the house, right? Your grandparents can help with the kids because they can easily, play with the kids, take the kids out and everything like that. Your parents are able now to bear more fruit because they're able to work without the stress of kids. They're able to work without the stress of you as a youth, right? When everything is working, when every part is working together, you realize it's a cycle because the roots are now looking up to us as the trunk, because any kid now, any youth now looks up to the older youth for what we do. Like you say, if we smoke, if we drink, if we party, if we do this is what looks cool because we are so headstrong about it and we are so passionate about it. We move with it. You've got so much energy. And these youth that have no way of expressing their own self at that young age, they're still rooted, they're looking at you now and thinking, I want to be there. You see what I mean? So when I come back to our topic now, like the mental shift, sometimes it's not necessarily always a case of, I don't know, this is happening to me and everything like that. Sometimes if we step back and we realize the environment we're in and we realize how that's affecting us, you can then start making a way on how you can take that environment and shape it and create a reality that's different to the one that you may have seen before, to the one that you may have been influenced by before, right? Yes, drinking looks cool. Yes, smoking looks cool. Yes, going clubbing and partying and all that looks cool, right? But then if you go back to what you said, if you are so caught up in the short-term gratification and pleasure of things, right? You're not seeing what you can do with the amount of power you have. It's like you're taking that much power and just using it for a weekend, right? You use it and then you tire out, and then you're asking yourself like, why do I even do it? I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of this. But if we take that same power and realize I want to create a different reality, I want to be something by the time I'm 30, 40, 50, what you do today is going to be adding on to something you're going to become when you're 40. Not to wake up when you're 40 and realize I could have done something when I was 20. If that makes sense. I hope I did make sense, because I know it sounds like a lot. But that's all, man. Like, I don't know if you get what I meant there,
I did, no, for sure. And I think one of the most powerful parts of that was with kind of so the older youths, so let's just say people in their 20s, and with like the younger youths, like things that we do, like the next generations, like you say, look up to. And so I think, if we want to just kind of go in, very kind of long-term kind of macro now, if we want to create a better world, ultimately, I think that's how we do it, right? It's through, I'm not sure if we touched upon it last week or the conversation we had after the episode, but like, it's going to be kind of our age, people in our age, like our generation, that kind of can set the stone to like make that happen. So what I mean by that, and I've had actually this conversation with a lot of people. And so my North Star, my mission, my thing is to create more of like a conscious personal growth world, right? I've kind of shared this a lot over the past month, where people are practicing things like gratitude and expecting nothing, and, appreciating everything, and, doing more, complaining less, kind of these types of things. And I think how we get there is through our generation, right? So people in their 20s, I've seen more people kind of get into more mindset and personal growth, personal development, practicing it for themselves. And then when they come to have children, they then sharing kind of these practices with their children, bringing them up in that environment, because like our environment is so important to us. Like if you grow up in an environment where, you know, your parents are kind of, you know, involved in those sorts of things as well, so if it's drinking or drugs and that, then that's all you know, because you're in that environment. You know, there are people that want to break out of that environment, and, you know, and go in because because within them, you know, that they believe like there's more out there for them, and so, you know, they break out, and then you kind of hear these people with these amazing like life transformational stories, and that's amazing. But I think for the kind of like average person, right, like that's all that they know. And so I think how we then bring this back around full circle, create that more conscious personal growth world, or a better world, or whatever you want to call it, is through, like you say, encouraging the next generations to practice more of these things of like mindset, right? Of like self-esteem, of confidence, and all of these different things, because it's so important for their own growth and development. So, you know, I'm all about helping the next generation, and in the process also helping this, you know, generation as well to improve and to grow. So yeah, that, you know, that's, I think, from using that tree example, I think that's kind of what I got from it, was really like the real powerful thing of then those next generation. Because for me, again, like our environment is everything in us, and I think how we kind of change that, because what happens, like if you look back through history, things just repeat itself. You know what I'm saying? Like I think at some point there needs to be that change maker, you know, that action taker, or these action takers in the world that change and do things differently. That's obviously what this podcast is about. But, you know, to do those things differently to better all of us ultimately. And one other thing I wanted to mention was about when you were talking there about, you know, the short term pleasure and everything as well that I mentioned before. I think with that, a lot of people don't think about the long term because they're so caught up in the moment and in the cycle that they're in. And that's why I think that they do these short term pleasures and everything as well. Like, I think I know, like, I'm probably a little bit, I could be too much like the other way. I think too much about the long term, when really I should focus just on like the current, like this moment, because this is my life, right? I'm not living, you know, in 2050, and I'm not living in 1995, you know, when I was born or something. Like, I'm living in this moment right now. So I do kind of recognize that from a self-awareness point of view. But I think especially with like young people, like they don't think about when they're 30 or 35 or 40 and what, like how their habits and the things that they're doing today will affect their future. And I think that's a conversation to have as well. So yeah, that's kind of my, you know, thoughts on the tree example you gave, which was good, man. Like it got me thinking, you know.
I hope it did, man. I hope it made sense. Because if, like what you said, like just now, on if we truly want to change the future, like you said, you want to help and bring about more conscious living from people, right? I mean, it's hard for us. We could never convince our parents to change their outlook on life, because remember, they have had 40, 50 years of that perception. And if you remember from first episode, like on how when we lock into a perception, it's like having a dent, right? And
yeah, I remember. Yeah, last week. Yeah,
you know what I mean? So the more you see life from that perception, it's going to be very hard for somebody to move you and dent something new into your life. That's where you find.
But Leroy, sorry, I'm jumping in here. But I do think it's possible, but it just takes more work. You know, I'm like a huge believer in like growth mindset, etc. And so I don't want people to like listen to this and be like, okay, so I'm just stuck in my ways. It's like you can, but like you say, like if you have that perception and that perspective for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and that's all that you've known. It's same with environment, right? That's all that you've known. It's gonna take more, like even more hard work, right? Even more hard work to undo those beliefs and everything. So I want to share that with people as well. Like it is possible, but like you say, it's just going to take that harder work to be able to shift that perspective ultimately.
And you literally cut me off when I was about to say, like, there's those two mindsets.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry,
right, man. I like it, man. Like, you think of those two mindsets that we spoke on, the growth and the fixed. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
As much as those older people may be there with a fixed mindset, we also have a capability of having a growth mindset. Nobody has a fixed mindset, if that makes sense. You're not just growth and you're just fixed. We almost have some percentage of both,
Right.
because only then will you be able to sort of have some consistency and with your life. So if you think with a fixed mindset, it's like what you mentioned, it's somebody who will listen to us right now and think that we are encouraging people to just stick in their ways, right? But it's not necessarily the case. We want to encourage people to understand that we all have the capability of having a growth mindset, of actually looking at life in a whole different way. And like you said, it's very hard to pick up something new, but it's not impossible, right?
Mm.
It's not impossible, because you have to remember as well, when you are trying to learn something new, if it took me 25 years to know what I know today, if I'm trying to learn something completely different to this lifestyle, it's going to take me another 25 years to unlearn and relearn something new at the same time. That's why sometimes it becomes such a very hard task to think about, or to even just settle for something that we may think, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just going to keep on my way, because nobody wants to get off the bus they're on, you know what I mean, and try and catch on another bus while you're trying to forget about the older bus. It's very hard, but it's not impossible. And I
Mm.
guess if we bring it back to the topic of today, is that as 20 something year olds, that's even more important for us to understand that none of us, no matter what, like what you mentioned, like no matter the background you're coming from, no matter the type of parents you've had, no matter the type of environment you've been brought up in, we can just type up online and we will see so many of the examples of this very fact we're talking about, that people have been able to change themselves, and in that process change the reality that they are living, no matter the background they've had. I think of Oprah when I think about
Mm.
an example. This is a woman who was abused, who was like, she was just, if you hear her story, you'll be amazed at how she has become who she is, right? But you understand that when you come to understand that it's not necessarily the environment that's going to always determine what your life is going to be like. Sometimes it's actually you who is the catalyst, who determines what you want in your life. And when we go back
Yeah.
to what we're talking about, when you make those little agreements, you're just agreeing to saying, yes, this is the environment I've been brought up in. Yes, this is the environment that I will take on, and this is the environment I will perpetuate to my youth, right? But I've got a little brother. I've got like too many little brothers, right? And and I've got one who's 19, I've got one who's 14, I've got one who's 11, I think I've got one who's under 10. I've got a little sister. So I'm looking at all these, my siblings, and from the one who follows me, I can see how close he is to me, because he saw the things I did, and he is now, in a way, not necessarily step by step, but in a way, very much coming along my way. Now, it's the one that
Mm.
comes after him that I'm very interested in right now, the 14-year-old, because he's developing in a very fast paced world. His mentality here has matured beyond his years, but I can see that he is not able to fully express himself because my parents will gun him down. You see what I mean? And that's where we all have been in some part of
Mm.
our lives, is that under our parents we may come to a point where we may want to question things, express certain things, say certain things, but because we understand of how our parents will react to it, we keep quiet and we just
Yeah.
go about our life, right?
I can
Until you
relate to
come to
that.
18, right? When you come to
Yeah.
18, you're like, it's my life now. I don't care what you say to me. I'm gonna do what I want. You know what I mean? Because now
but
you're
even with that,
mm,
but even with that, I think a lot of people, or like also our age, like although they still might be, get to that age of 18, 19, 20, they still
mm,
live kind of like in their parents' shadow.
yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, I've met and had many conversations with young people who like, I don't want to go to uni, but my parents want me to,
Mm.
you know? And it's like, they want you to because one, that's kind of like how they got brought up. Society thinks like if you go to uni and then get a job as a doctor, that's a success. But is that really what you want and is going to make you happy? Like, is that something you're interested in and passionate about? And kind of all these other different questions. So yes, like we get to 18 and like you say, then we have that more choice and that more freedom. But I think a lot of people still find that very difficult, you know, to kind of to carry out practically, you know, because maybe you know it's going back to that habit thing, like they're in that cycle, right? They're in that habit of, you know, of just like being, I suppose, like being under 18, you know, and kind of their parents like being there and everything. And look, I don't want to hate on parents and everything. I just think that to give that more choice to young people, because I shared a post on this a couple of weeks ago as well. Because I think what tends to happen is, and it happens, I've seen it, thinking about it more, happens with parents as well, but even with, going a little bit off topic, with people like coaches and mentors, right? I think what tends to happen is we want to help in a way a little bit too much. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we have to go through an experience to learn the lesson, to grow. And if people are constantly taking away that experience from us, then how are we going to learn the lesson in order to grow? Somebody shared this with me on the Motivational Mentors podcast I was doing. Isabel shared this with us, you know, and it made me realize that whether it is a parent or if I'm somebody that wants to help people, you know, when I want to help people, am I then taking away the experience that they need in order to grow? And I think that happens with young people a lot, that during this time, we, in a way, like we have to make mistakes in order to learn the lesson, to grow. Now, what we can do is support the person through it. There's a huge difference between supporting somebody through a process and like helping them. I think like helping them is, again, like you're taking away that learning experience, if this is making sense. When you're just supporting them, like you're guiding them kind of through it, you know, and you're there in almost like by their side. Whereas I think when you're like helping them, so let's just say, I'm going to use a really bad example right now, but let's just say if somebody wants to learn computer skills or something, supporting them would be like sitting by them and kind of, you know, being there for them and just guiding them through that process, you know, where if you're helping them and they get stuck on something, you would then take that seat and that like do it for them, you know. And so through that process, like what are they learning? Like they're not necessarily learning the lesson on how to do something or learning the actual skill set on how to do something, because you do that through the practice. So bad example, guys, it's just the one that came to my mind. But I think bring this back around full circle again, I think this was also what happens throughout life, any age, but especially with young people, because like you say, using the tree, right?
Yeah.
It's the branches and the leaves in that will then also want to protect younger people, the trunk in that as well, where because we are young and we are that trunk, that actually we can handle quite a lot and still overcome things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, it definitely does. But you know what you said there about mistake, about learning from those mistakes. I read a quote once that was saying, um, if you don't learn from a mistake, no, what did it say? If I can find it again, hold on. It says, hold on, I think I've got it here. Yes, it says, use a mistake to learn from. It is a mistake if you don't.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you get that?
Yeah,
Use
I
a
get it.
mistake to learn from. But if you don't learn from that mistake,
The actual mistake is not. The actual mistake is not learning from the mistake.
from the mistake, yes, it's like you've doubled the effect. You know what I mean? And it's something where I think from what you're saying there as well, like it's good for us to learn from those experiences of having mistakes. But I think now what we have advantage of, especially in our day and age, is that we have the ability to see other people making mistakes. So in other people making mistakes, it does, just because you walked in the fire, you made a mistake of walking in the fire, and then you got your leg burnt, and I saw that with my own two eyes. How can I turn around and say, nah, you didn't get burnt, you're fine. Let me go and see it for myself, and walk in it for myself, right? So there is certain things that, like you're right, there is certain experiences that we truly all have to do them individually to actually get that lesson. And then there are also those things that we can easily avoid based by seeing others go through it. You know what I'm saying? Because we wouldn't have all these people who are successful like Gary Vaynerchuk, all these guys who come up and tell us like what they've done, what they've gone through, what we can do, how we can go on about it, right? Because in them sharing their stories, they're not necessarily saying follow my lead to the T, but see how I've gone through my life, and through your own observation, see what I have done and what you can do even better right now when I was at your age. Do you get it now? Because now we how am I going to progress further than Gary Vaynerchuk if I don't look at his story and see what mistakes he's shared with me that he has made, that I'm able to now avoid those mistakes as I go on along. Innit? I'm able to learn even more because now there's certain things that I haven't taken time to get a mistake on to learn from, because I've learned it from somebody who's already lived that mistake, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think with that, I think there's like a balancing act with like both. I think definitely, because what I think will happen is once people start, they're pursuing the things that that they want to do and everything. I think, and take the advice from these people. Through that process in itself, there's going to be challenges and things that come up. And then I think like you're taking the advice or the guidance or the lessons learned from these people, but then there's going to be just other mistakes or things that happen just in life that then also you then need to go through to learn the experience in order to grow, as I'm sharing. So I think like there's the balancing act between the two. And if I'm honest, I like thinking about it just as you were saying that, I think they go hand in hand ultimately. And I think it's for me, like, it's difficult to put it into words because people will notice that for themselves once they start. Like if they start that business and then they take the advice from others, but then also see some of the challenges that they need to push through in order to grow, and they need to go through it themselves. So then for me, like, it comes back to, in my mind, of that thing of starting, like whatever like you want to go out there and pursue. And yeah, I think a lot of you also young people have that challenge because everything for me comes around full circle, right? They have that challenge because then they're scared is probably too much of a wrong word, but they're like, well, what are my parents going to think if I start this journey or do this or do that? What's my best friend going to think? You know what I'm saying? And but I think the power is just starting, like, whatever the thing you want to go out there and pursue. But even if even in life in general, obviously there's going to be just challenges and things that happen. And so I think it's again applying both of the, like, both scenarios or both things that we're sharing here, of one, using the experience maybe even from our parents or from mentors or people who we trust in that, in order to grow through the experience, but also sometimes actually realizing that we have to be the ones to experience it to learn the lesson to grow. So I think kind of my final thoughts on kind of that part of our conversation, I don't know if you would agree, would be like the balancing act between both. And my greatest kind of thoughts or no advice to people would be like apply whichever one to your journey, to a situation like you feel you need to apply at that time in order to grow, right? Because the overriding thing here, and I'm sure you'll agree, is helping people to grow. Like whichever path or whichever thing that they choose, which is going to help people to grow like the fastest, or whatever it is. And sometimes it's going to be going through the experience to learn the lesson, and sometimes it's going to be getting that advice or getting that tip or like whatever it is from a mentor, or learning from somebody else's experience, because like you say, we've seen it firsthand of what they've done, and like, oh shit, like that doesn't work, so I'm not going to do that. Instead I'm going to do this, and then and then they might choose that, and then you need to learn the experience to go through that. So that would be kind of my thoughts on that.
I'm glad you ended up on that, because just to take it back to where we started and basically just kind of finish off my part here with this, is that what you just described there and what we've just spoken on, right, in terms of how we come from a point where into our adulthood we go through a phase, right, mentally, physically, spiritually, and you are coming into your own being as you come into the 20 somethings, right? 1, 2, you find that you are an integral part of society or family, community, whatever you want to call it, right? As the analogy I was talking about, the tree, right? As a youth, you are the stronghold. You hold us true. You are the passion, the fire, the drive, basically, right? And when we take it all together with how it goes hand to hand with learning from experiences, as well as what taking advice and listening to others who may have who may be in a better position to give you a better perception or to whatever you're going through, right? Those three, when we look at it and we look at that tree analogy, like what you just said there, like there's some people who may know something better. That's probably like the branches and the leaves, because if we look at it from that point of, our parents have been at a point where they were strong and steadfast and didn't want anything to do but their own, right? But as they grew, they realized, I need to connect, I need to be able to reach further. That's why you see branches are quite connected. Our parents are quite connected with the world, right? And through their connection, yes, they may have their perception to life and they may want to impose it on us, but they still share with us some golden gems of just experiences and what you can avoid and what you can do to just better your life. It's not always, oh, we are against our parents. Like you said, it's a balancing act. I guess the 20-something, from what we've spoken, that's where I'm coming to conclude on, is that it's all a balancing act. If you realize that, yes, you're going through a phase of change, of independence, so that you can be interdependent with the world, right? And through that growing to be independent and interdependent with the world, you will make mistakes. You will, go through experiences. They are all to shape you to be a better human being, to be a better version of yourself, right? And when we now take into consideration, people who may be older than us or who may have advice for us, even our friends, just listening to other people and having an open mind at the 20-something-year-old, as a 20-something-year-old, you're able to capture more. You're able to hold on to more. You're able to filter the things that you may feel like this is going to sustain me and help me through to what I want to create in this world, right? So as a balancing act, you're trying to take what you have been given, become your own, and also share with the world what you have found within yourself. And because it's a process where you are still learning to be your own person, a 20-something-year-old, best believe life used to be different back in the old age. I'm a very biblical person, and if you think like kids at one point, they would start working at 12, 13, 14. It's not a case that they were child labor is the fact that their maturity, they had the lifestyle, the environment enabled the kids to mature at a faster rate. So they were able to understand quite a lot about life. That's why you find there were kings that were as young as 16. Think of Alexander the Great. You know, he was 21 and he's leading a nation and he's conquering places. It's not necessarily about, age. Age doesn't really define your maturity. It's your own maturity. You know what I mean? That then is reflected by your age, I guess, sometimes. So as a 20-something-year-old, it's all a balancing act between the things that we want to be in this life and the things that people want us to be in this life, and making sure that we put our own things in the forefront, because at the end of life, at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, I've worked in care, and I've spoken to some, elderly people, and I've asked, like, do you regret, is there anything you regret in your life? And somebody was like, no, I don't, because I've lived my life in the way that I have felt content. And when we are at this age, like what you said, we've got so many influences that we struggle to listen to our own self, until only when you realize that it's actually my own life that I'm actually leading here. And that's when we come to 40s, 50s, 60s. And then that's when you realize, like, wow, I don't have much energy like that. I don't have much. Because I've been told, like, I'm always been told, like, you guys, don't worry about anything. You're so young, you do this. But for us, you think about it. You think things are just so big. You know what I mean? So big. But it's the balancing act, like you said, about looking at things in a bigger scale, but also enjoying the moment of being a 20-something-year-old, shaping the world, influencing the ones that are coming after us, and listening to those that have been before us, because only then can we have a better vision of how we are going to shape a better world as we leave it. I think, if it makes sense.
Yeah. I think on that, for me, it's kind of like taking the not necessarily the opinions of others, but the actual practical things that people share from their experiences. Like, I don't want people to kind of get into this mindset of like listening to other people's opinions, because we all have opinions. And for me, do opinions actually sometimes help people? I want to look at like the practical stuff, right? So maybe the experiences that people have that we can learn from, so then we don't have to go through it. So I think kind of, and you touched on it there, using kind of these things to then help us to find our own inner voice to then grow and move forward. Like, that's what I'm realizing more, that my message is as well. It's about finding like your own inner voice, and something that it's been a challenge for me during this young age. But I think like that's what it is. And one other point I wanted to share was, and I think Gary Vee shares this. He shares that a lot of people are in life either play like in the black or in the white, so like the two, so it's like things are either black or white ultimately, when actually life is played in the middle, like it's played in the gray, and I think that shows kind of what we're discussing here, is that like there's not one way to live your 20s or whatever it is. Like, if you want to listen to your parents more than maybe somebody else, then go ahead. If you want to do this, then do, like, fine. For me, like, my closing thoughts would be, just realize that every decision, choice that you take sets you down a different path. And for me, you touched on it there, my thing is to then not get to the end of my life and have a shit ton of regrets, because then it's too fucking late. Like, I can't do nothing about it then. And so I think that would be my overall message to younger people, would be like, just realize that, stop playing so short term. And we're doing it here, like just sharing those other different perspectives with people, just sharing those other perspectives with people, so then they can make the choices for themselves. That would be some of my final thoughts as well. Like, there isn't a right answer, like, like the white and black kind of example that people play, like it's either this way or this way. Like, life doesn't work like that.
I think
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off there. I think that mentality is really something that it really it gives us those anxious thoughts, it gives us those, a fear of expressing ourselves, because you're thinking, if what I'm about to do is not white or black, then I don't know what to do now.
But so then people want control, right? They want, like, I don't know, like maybe control, or I don't know what it is, like, but I think like that's where life is played, like things aren't like you say, things, people kind of get into this mindset, like things either have to be this way or this way. An example would be, I've kind of realized from a podcast I did with somebody, was that you either have to be, an entrepreneur or work at like a 9 to 5. But what for those people that they hate the 9 to 5, and maybe they don't have the total skill sets to become an entrepreneur and build the next Apple? Well, there's this thing called solopreneurship, right? Freelancing, etc. Kind of like this thing, almost another option, like this thing in the middle where you're, whereas maybe you and like one other person, like a VA or something, and you're running a business and you're super happy, you're doing what you love. So again, like might be a bad example, but I think sometimes people kind of get into even like that mindset using that example of like, okay, I have to work a 9 to 5, or I have to go and build the next Apple, or the next Amazon, and build this huge business. And it's like, no, like, so that would be an example of that I would give with like the things that I have to be in, like white or black kind of type of thing. Like, yeah, I just think people too often think like that instead of finding that thing in the middle. And I think that's where a lot of people's like purpose could be, or like happiness could be, and like whatever you call it, is kind of in that. Because I just think like more, that's how like life works, But again, like for me, why I'm passionate about helping younger generation is like that regrets thing, because I can see it right now that, and I've heard of it. I've spoke to people, they're doing things at this age right now that they don't want to do, and I just know that they get to 30, 40, 50 later, they're going to have regrets, and if they just was a little bit more, had that more growth mindset, right, or just develop their perspective more, listen to other perspectives, and just kind of open their mind a bit more to different ways. Like there's not just that one way of uni, right? You could do this or you could do this, and then like what you done, test, try, taste all these different things to find your path.
Definitely. Nah, it's true, man. I don't think I can. There's no better way to end it. Yeah, you've got it, man. You got
Awesome,
it.
dude. So guys, like we hope this opened up your mind, right, and shared different perspective. I think there was a lot there for people to go through. Awesome conversation.
I think this one is gonna need another episode. This one.
Yeah. Should do part 2 next week or something.
I think we should do part 2 sometime in the future.
in the future. But yeah, I think again, like for me, I just don't want people to have regrets, and I think if people then just use this time to try and build something, while listening to their intuition and their inner self, and also not being ego led, sorry, and then when needed, asking for that support or listening to that mentor, somebody who then has that experience because they're older. I think again, it comes back to it, full circle. It's not about that black or that white, right? It's not about fully listening to your intuition or fully listening to other people's opinions. It's the balance. It's the in between of listening to yourself, right? Your intuition, because like you're the best person who knows yourself. But also in moments throughout your life, you're gonna have to get advice from somebody, or you're gonna have to get a mentor. You're gonna have to listen to your parents. So I'll pass it back over.
I just had a question of what you just said there. I wanted to then ask, and then I guess it's a question to think about after the show. It's like, in us having to have that balance of not necessarily always following what people are saying, or not necessarily like neglecting what people are saying. Like, how then do you how can you maintain such a balance in a world that we live in today, where you're very much driven by what other people are doing? if that makes sense, because of social media, because of, we have a very big fear of missing out and not conforming to what the rest are doing. So to follow your own intuition when you're coming against the tide of, opinions and influences and everything like that, how can you? I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. Like it must be
Yeah.
something.
So I think for me,
Mm.
it's free. So for me, it's through that inner work, and it's through that personal development, and it's through that personal growth. Because for that confidence and that self-esteem for one to grow. Because like if you're confident in what you're doing and your self-esteem is kind of where you know needs to be, to not compare yourself or kind of whatever it is, I don't actually think that is really a problem.
Mm.
Because you're confident in what you're doing. Like, I think also, I think it comes up to that confidence, that self-esteem, that also that belief, kind of these things. Maybe that's an episode for next week or something to like dive in to dive in more. But yeah, I know what you mean, because so many people like might just value other people's opinions too much, and kind of with that, I think with like even with like the advice thing, we're kind of on it at this young age. I think it's about having that growth mindset, but also like taking that advice around the things that you maybe don't know, or the things that are more like weaknesses to you, and then always trying to build upon your strengths as well. So look, again, like I don't necessarily know the answer, because I don't think it's black and white. I think it's in the gray again, and I think people would like need to work out what's best for them as well. So but I definitely see where you're coming from. I think that's a deeper conversation to have.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's linked, because a lot of young people kind of face that,
Because I saw it
yeah.
just quickly, like when I was coming up now to was the 20 years of my age. Like I remember now, I was seeing people around me, like they were just flourishing. Do you know what I mean? If it makes sense.
But was they?
Eh?
But was they? Because what
But what?
happens?
Yeah.
Was they? Because what happens is, especially with social, right? That's social is people's highlight reel, right? People might go to uni and be like, my life's so fucking great on social media, or I go to uni and kind of be like this, but then they go home and they're freaking in their room depressed as hell or something, like you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, And so I think that's what happens. Like people then also value other people's opinions too much. They value what other people are doing too much. And when you do that inner work, and like not necessarily be self-centered, but like you just focus on like what you want to do almost, and your mission and your purpose and that, and then you give to others and you help and you support others or with what they're doing. I don't know why our mindset is always like, even just in that, like I think it's a sense of like comparing ourselves, right? Oh, well, they're doing that. Well, great for them. Like, how can then instead of like they're doing that, I'm jealous or whatever it is. Should the mindset be they're doing that? That's awesome. How can I support them even further or something? And sharing that perspective with people. Like doing that.
You're right, man. I think you're right.
Does that make sense?
It does, man. It does, because like what you said there, like it when you go back home, we don't know what somebody's doing after they close their door, but it's like if you have a sense of like worth, not self-centered, not arrogantly, like no, but it's like you're actually acknowledging the presence you have in this world. Yes, there's 1 billion people, 7 people in the world, but because you have 2 feet that are on the ground, that automatically puts you in a very it's your effect of life. That's it. You are effect of life, and it's like finding out what that fact is only gives you that much pleasure to live it out. if that makes sense, because now
Yeah,
you're living out your own very fact of life. As much
that's
as we
it.
have so many different perspectives, it's the fact that you are content and you are not regretting any step you're taking. And only then do you now see more of, you know what, I am enough. Yes, my friend may have a very successful business, or maybe traveling the world, or maybe doing so much, but clearly there's something that I myself am worth for. You know what I mean? And only until you look at yourself as worthy do we then begin actually seeing your the actions you have in life. And like you said, like until you until you see yourself, right, until you value yourself, right, you always look at things out there as if they are almost against you, you know, they are almost,
So yeah,
I don't know if that's making sense, because now,
it
because
is.
you don't see any worth or value, or any, you don't even appreciate yourself to begin with. It's hard for you to appreciate your friends' success, to appreciate your friends' growth, to appreciate the people around you and what they're saying. You more likely put them down because you've already been putting yourself down. So we
100%,
only get what
100%.
we already are inside.
Yeah,
But
and to actually wrap this up, and
yeah,
in some final thoughts in that is, and to bring this back around full circle to the original topic of like 20 something, is so two things. Thing number one, it's about living life. So most people live life from the outside in. So
yeah,
like happiness or things is like from the outside in, when actually it's found in from the inside out. And I think that is something that I want to encourage more young people to do, but they may be resistant, or kind of, I don't necessarily know what it is. I haven't put my finger on it.
mm,
But then they don't, right? They don't live from the inside out because it's weird, or because they value other people's opinions too much, and because they're caught in that cycle I shared before of
mm,
escaping their reality at the club, you know, drugs,
mm,
alcohol, etc. So they're never going to do the inside out work because it's painful. Like looking in is hard. Doing the inside work, I don't, you can probably relate to this. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Like most people don't want to do it. Most people don't do it because it's hard. And so that would be like my final thought is that actually, like whatever age you are, just going kind of, you know, to everyone, to do that inside work out. And I think that is where you find ultimately everything that you're looking for.
yeah. I think I'll summarize it like this. You know, work on your spirit to find peace in your soul so that you can be content in your life. You know what I mean? It's always the spirit. Because if I've got
Mm.
this very moody spirit, like, never really end. So anything in life,
Yeah,
I'm just gonna come across like, whatever, get out of my face. But if I'm
yeah,
very work on your spirit, you're right, man. Work on your spirit, man. As a 20-year-old something, it's very crucial to accept yourself, man. Accept yourself, because it is you who's going to shape the world. And if we sleep on it now, you wake up at 40, 30, and then you're realizing that your time is gone, and I feel like that's where that whole midlife crisis comes along. I've heard about, I don't know, I'm still to get there, but
yeah. Well, again, going back into the two mindsets that we were talking about, I think it's still doable, but it's 10 times harder. So yeah. Well, Leroy, this has been an awesome podcast, over an hour. So it's been an awesome episode too. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today, man.
no, you too, man. Thank you, thank you. It's been great.
Guys, it really has like a lot there, so hopefully people find it valuable and it helps people.
Yeah,
Guys,
and I think
thank you for
if
listening.
anyone has
Sorry.
got, sorry, like if anybody's got any point that we've spoke on in the last hour, because of what we said, I think this is gonna need a second part. So if people
Mm,
were to sort of like give us more pointers that they would like us to actually nail down on next time, and then we can sort of like dive into that, because it was such a broad thing. As a 20-year-old something, it's quite a broad subject.
it
So
is.
yeah, it was great, man. But
It
over to
is.
you.
It is. It is a broad subject because there's no like just one way of living life. And come back to my point of the black and the white and the grey. Like there is not just one way. So ultimately, just find what works for you by doing the inner work. But yeah, guys, we would love to hear feedback. We would love to hear for like that second episode that we are thinking of doing. Is there more of a direction that you want to go down? But we will be back next week for episode 3. And hopefully we will not have the technical difficulties. Hopefully my internet will hold out. Hopefully my earphones will work and everything. But in the meantime, guys, have an awesome week. And we will talk to you next week. Take care.
Thanks.